I might try and find out. Looks like Matt Keane in New South Wales has had a light bulb moment, James, realising the importance of coal, and New South Wales is going to introduce, surprise, surprise, a domestic coal reservation policy. What a surprise.
Yeah, well, some of the coal mines in New South Wales do have a domestic coal reservation already attached to their mining, but this is to be more broadly rolled out across the whole state. Matt Keane's kind of making out we've got a shortage of coal. There is no shortage of coal in this country, let alone in New South Wales. It's the epicentre of some of the best coal in the country. What we've got a shortage of is honesty from our politicians. And the honest truth is that this country cannot survive off wind and solar. And Matt Keane has openly admitted now that the grid itself, which is part of a national energy grid, is heavily reliant on coal and those coal-fired power stations. What's going to be quite upsetting here is New South Wales is a supplier of electricity not just to their own state, but because they're part of the NEG, the National Energy Guarantee, they are supplying power to the ACT, which doesn't have any fossil fuel generators in its little territory. But they also supply Queensland at times, into Victoria, Adelaide. So he's doing this at the expense of his state for the whole country. And I think that it's going to really rattle the confidence of those coal mines. What they do need to do is just get on and open more coal mines. If there's a shortage of coal, or you think there is a shortage of coal, or you need greater supply, speed up some of those approval processes, and getting some more coal mines in the Hunter Valley wouldn't go astray.
This energy debate we're having, it's so frustrating because we're trying to suggest that we're going to do everything with solar and wind, and we can't.
No, we can't.
And when you see Chris Bowen, who's the energy minister, I mean, he seems to be completely deluded about what he can and can't do.
Well, he's failed at every ministry he's had, so why would we be surprised about that? But you're quite right. I mean, fossil fuels are here to stay. 60% of all electricity here comes out of coal. And we've had a minority of coal mines who've had long-term contracts, and they've been bearing the brunt. And this policy is designed to bring the other coal mines in. But whenever government starts to intervene in price setting, which is what's triggered this, you get into grief. And but the important thing is this: we're not short of coal. What we are short of
common sense is what we're short of.
Coal-fired power stations.
Yes.
Liddell is supposed to close in April. Eraring, I think, is meant to close in 2025. We cannot do without this capacity. And to say you're going to build some battery, lithium battery, which will supply a very minute percentage of power as opposed to what is being put out by the coal-fired power stations, means that we are headed for blackouts and power rationing. And all those people with smart meters, then your supply of electricity can be turned on and off via the controlling agency.
Yeah, good luck during winter. James, it is a mess, and we just went through a federal election campaign, and I don't need to remind you about that, back in May, and we were told we were going to get cheaper energy, cheaper electricity prices, cheaper gas prices. I got an email from Momentum Energy the other day saying, oh, well, your gas is going up on February 1. What happened to that promise?
Yeah, broken. These are lies that were told by the Labor Party to try and convince voters, and I think they successfully did it. They just didn't lie about electricity prices. They lied about immigration numbers. They're lying as of this week about the job numbers that they claim they've created. These are lies that Labor continue to be called out on, and unfortunately we've got them for another 2 and a bit years. So suck it up, people. You voted for them. Well, at least 30% of the country did, and we're all going to have to suffer at the hands of Labor for another 2 years at least. I
think it'll be a bit longer than that, just quietly. Now, I want to talk about rubbish bins. That might sound like a strange thing to talk about, but we're now being told, and I live in Victoria, so I've got a green garbage bin, and then a bin with a green lid, and a bin with a yellow lid. One for recyclables, one for garden waste, and one for rubbish. We're told we're now going to get 4 bins Now, the new one is going to be for organic waste or compost. Now, my council's going to do that. Is your council told you, Bronwyn, you're going to do that?
Well, I've actually got 5 bins.
5?
And the smallest one is for ordinary garbage. That's the one with the red lid.
Yes.
Then there's one with a blue lid, and that's for paper and the ilk.
Yep.
And there's one with a yellow lid, and that's for bottles and that sort of waste.
So your bottles and your paper are separate?
Separate. And then I have 2 large bins, which is for garden waste. And they get filled very, very, very frequently.
That's because you're a great gardener, that's why.
Well, I live in the Northern Beaches, and we have lots of trees and things.
James, how many bins you got?
I've got 2, thank God, and I have a tough enough time remembering to put them out on a Monday night, let alone if I end up with 4 or 5. But the reality of this, what people don't realise, Steve, is for every bin you get, your rates go up. And I was talking to Livingston Shire, where I live, in central Queensland there. If they implement this additional bin, a 3rd bin for us, which is what we're talking about, it's going to increase our rates by somewhere between $550 and $750 a year. I don't want that. Sorry. I'll just throw it all in the general waste bin, thank you very much.
And the problem is that I think we all suspect, don't we, that probably that's what happens when it gets to the rubbish tip anyway. Wasn't there a story in New South Wales just recently about a whole bunch of recycled stuff was stored in warehouses?
Because there's no market for the recyclables.
Unbelievable. I want to ask you both about a story I started the program with today, and that's the Australian Open Tennis. They've gone completely woke, and they had yesterday what they called Mob Day. And so you were able to get $10 off your ground pass if you're Indigenous, whether you're an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. Now, the crazy thing about this, both of you, is that you could buy your ticket online. You didn't even have to actually prove that you were Indigenous or a Torres Strait Islander, and you got the discount. What are we doing, James, dividing up tennis tickets by race?
Well, if you want to get technical, we're all Indigenous, if you were born here, that is. So it's pretty easy to tick that little box if you wanted your $10 discount. But getting back to the point, if they were putting a line in the sand here and saying to people, well, you'll get the discount if you are black and you won't get it if you're white, that's racist. And this is what's frustrating the people of this country, particularly when it comes to the voice to Parliament, where there is no definition as to what this voice will look like. Again, it's drawing a line in the sand saying you'll get an additional voice if you are Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, and if you're not, you only get 1 vote. So, look, these things don't bode well with the majority of Australians. I don't know why they've done it. I don't know why these people continue to think they're doing something good, because it's not appreciated, not even by the Indigenous or Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people. They just want to be treated as Australian.
It's so frustrating, Bronwyn, when sporting organisations think they have to get political. Yeah,
well, politics has been alive in sport, I suppose, for a long time. But the point is this, that the whole debate about the voice is how many Prime Ministers said no to Noel Pearson first? At least 3.
Yep.
Why do you think Albo said yes to proceeding with it? Albo is a man I sat with in the Parliament for 20 years in that chamber, the House of Representatives, and nobody ever said he was leadership material.
Yep.
And when he says he was underestimated, no, that's what it was. He's not a leader, he's a follower. He's following Noel Pearson. He has followed the minority on Australia Day by saying, oh, well, you can celebrate Australia Day any day you like.
Ridiculous.
Let me say why people will perhaps decide to work on Australia Day, because they'll take the Friday and have a long weekend.
Yeah.
Or they'll take Australia Day and take a sickie and have a 4-day weekend.
Plus, if you decide to work on a public holiday, you get paid more.
It's exactly right. So the point is that he's not a leader, he's a follower, and he's following a minority movement. 3 councils, or what have you got, 86 councils in Victoria? 3 of them are not going to have Australia Day. The others are. So why would you follow these minority movements? He's followed the Greens on the policies with regard to rebuilding the grid and getting rid of all our fossil fuels. There's not an original thought in the body.
Just finally, James, I mean, he couldn't even yesterday, the Prime Minister, rule out that if the Australian public vote no, that he might still legislate for a voice.
Well, it's dishonesty. And, when you get too tricky in politics, as we saw when they originally tried to introduce the GST, they couldn't explain it. People reject it. And I think that's what's going to happen here. And Anthony Albanese is being too tricky. And unfortunately, what I see, Steve, out there, the most engaged people in this debate I find on the street are women. And it's the women who are actually asking the question, well, what is involved in this? He's showing his true colours by denying women and all Australians the right to know what is precisely involved in this voice to Parliament, and not to answer that question as to whether or not he'll legislate if it fails at a referendum. That just shows Anthony Albanese is not being honest with the people of Australia.
Just finally, Bronwyn, we've got a big debate going on in the state election in New South Wales about poker machine reform. Do we need it?
Look, I have found that there's a great concern in the community about the level of gambling and about poker machines. From my personal point of view, I worry enormously about online gambling.
Yes.
And if people are forced off poker machines, where there at least is supposed to be somebody who's there in a care position and keeping an eye on things, if they go to their phone and they're just doing online gambling and getting the same buzz, there's no fetter on it at all. So I think that there is a move to have some trial with regard to a cashless card.
Yes,
I think people want to see that and see what the results of that is, because I think there is a genuine
Well, we need
concern.
to stamp out money laundering, but I mean,
I
is
think
it over
money
the top to stop people from betting as much as they want if they genuinely want to go and play on a poker?
If people can afford and that's the way they want to spend their money, rather than buying a sports car or umpteen pairs of shoes or collect paintings or
I gather
whatever,
you're not
that's
a
their
pokey
choice.
player.
I'm not a pokey player, no. I'm not. It does
James,
nothing
you
for
a
me.
pokey player, mate?
No, I look, when I was younger, I did. I fell for the lights and bells and whistles of pokies, I suppose. But look, in New South Wales, there are poker machine. This is how much they're worth, right? Between $550,000 and $650,000 for a single poker machine. So this is why pubs and clubs are selling for so much money. Of course, you don't pay that much if it's a non-for-profit organisation. But they're bringing in copious amounts of money. There's no doubt about it. Here in Queensland, we've got venues that are open, and we're talking pubs in the middle of, say, Rockhampton, where I am in central Queensland, open until 2 and 4 a.m. in the morning. No good comes from sitting in a poker machine until those sorts of hours of the morning. I know that the clubs and pubs will probably chastise me at some point for that, but the reality is we shouldn't have poker machines with a tap and go system. I'm trying to teach my nieces and nephews to stop tapping their mobile phones to pay for things, use cash. I think for me, if I was to put money into a poker machine, I want to know how much I'm losing, and throwing a tangible $20 note through a poker machine is a better way, I think, to educate people.
Yeah, I agree with you.
James, it is cash here in
urinating
New
money
South
up
Wales.
against a wall.
It is cash in New South Wales.
Yeah, it is at the moment, but you're talking about going cashless.
Well, they're talking about putting a daily limit on it. But who's to say what is a fairer limit for one person versus another one?
James, great to join you, mate. Thanks a lot for helping us out, Bronwyn. Always a pleasure to see you.
Thanks,
Thank you very
Steve. Thanks,
much.
Bronwyn.
Back after the break.